Okay, aloha kako. I see that some people are viewing. I see the little maka um, symbol, and I also see that some people are already in the chat. So let's just get started. Ona nai kahala me kalehua he halelehua noi ana ka noi. O ka uia ea no i nei e li a nei hoi o ka hiki mai. A hiki mai no o ko a hiki puno me ke aloha. Aloha e, aloha e, aloha e, aloha. Mai ka piʻina kala I haʻehaʻe, kahi a mauai kiahi ena o pele. Ai ke kū ana mai o ka lā, ma luna nei o ahu alua ka ʻonuhi o nā kai. Ai ka nā poʻokapu I ka lā I ka mole olu o Lehua ka ʻaina kāʻilila. Aloha mai kākou a pau. O wau o Makana Kāne-Martin nui. Mai o ahu mai koʻu makuahine no ke aukaha Hawaiʻi koʻu makuakane. Eia no wau ke noho nei ma o ahu, noho ana ma ʻalia paʻakai. Mahalo nui loa to Center for Native Hawaiian Advancement for having me today. And we're just gonna get started. I must admit, when I share my screen, everything else goes black. So I can't really see anybody else. Okay, so the title of my presentation today is Waimakalehua, Menstruation Through a Hawaiian Epistemology. And that word epistemology is a big fancy word for our Kanaka worldview. As I mentioned, my name is Makana Kāne-Martin. ʻOhana Kane is my mom's side, primarily here on Oahu. And Kuahiwi is the Inoa ʻohana of my Makuakane of my dad's side. And most of the Kuahiwi now are living in Hawaii Island. We come from a small place called Opihale. Newspapers is Opihali and so on and so forth. Currently, e kumu o lalo Hawaii, ma Kamehameha Kapālama in the middle school. I am in our space, so you may see some of my colleagues walking in through the door. Mai ka'iloa, I am a mea hula with Lehua, me kumuhula snowbird bento. I carry my halau wherever I go in all situations. And I'm here to talk about menstruation, but also where Ike has gone to where it's been since 2018 when I graduated with my master's from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, from Hawaii Nui Kea, specifically from Kamaka Kalani Center for um, Knowledge. And I'm just going to be really upfront. This was a master's. This was something that I wanted to research in college. And I had in 2016 through 18, this whole process was academic. Yeah, research question, essential question. Here are my PowerPoints, and here's the things. And I knew that that part of this journey was essential, but also just the beginning. That yeah, this was the easy stuff. So some of the things that I looked at in my research was how is menstrual blood understood through our Kanaka lens, blood viewed through a Kanaka lens. Some of the words that came up were kapu, and I must admit, for a period of time, kapu and noa made me really dizzy because I was just saying those many times. And a lot of the other words that came up were haumia and la'a, and we'll look at those words a little later. I also wanted to look at mo'olelo. So the two mo'olelo that really stood out to me were he mo'olelo no lu'ukia. That's when she and her partner Olopana were living on Hawaii Island, and there was this really interesting man. His name is Waiawea from Waimea. I also looked at he mo'olelo o Akahia Kuleana, and Akahia Kuleana direct kupuna from 21 generations above me. So I have a really close pili to her mo'olelo in this particular space in Waimakalehua and menstrual traditions. And in digging through the Nupepa and other mo'olelo, Ieve and Honua, which made me really excited, the placenta. So I found all of these things, yeah, all of these came up, all of these words, these kupuna speaking to me, yeah, whispering, and because it's just the way I am. What was the purpose? Yeah, what was the purpose or the function and of all of these separate things, but specifically, what was the purpose and the function and the meaning of halepe'a? Halepe'a nowadays in the 21st century is known as the tent. Yeah, you go to the bar, there's a halepe'a, there's a tent. But prior to our baby luau and prior to big pa'ina at the house, were menstrual houses and continue to be menstrual houses for some of us who practice a Hawaiian practice of menses. Some other functions that came up were kapa, and what does material culture of Waimakalehua look like now? And Akahia Kuleana again came up. And then finally, how can we apply this? How did one ʻohana within 2010, how did they form their own aha kahemua? And how can the rest of us Kanaka who want to do Waimakalehua in a deeper way, how can we connect to our practices and our culture, but especially that part of ourselves? But before moving on, this story, these accounts of Waimakalehua is all ho'omau. It's perseverance. And I believe that we as Kanaka are so good at persevering, especially in December and October, November, and December for me has been a really hard month. Yeah, but as I prepare for this presentation, I know that this is just another story of ho'omau. I just want to give my aloha to any of the ʻohana. Oh, I promised myself I'm not going to cry today. I want to just hold space for anybody who's lost someone this year. I want to hold space for the perseverance in this time of the Ma'i Ahulau. I also want to hold space for anyone who needs to persevere in this moment. And I do so because this story of reclaiming our Waimakalehua is a story of perseverance. Mahalo. So one of the first questions I get asked all the time when people identify me as the period lady, yeah, when I walk through, like, oh, that's there are usually three things that people identify me with. It's the, oh, that was the girl on La'i Kawai, on that Hawaiian language play. Oh, that's the Hawaiian girl that teaches yoga. Yes, I teach yoga maka o lalo Hawaii. And other identifier people have with me is, oh, that's the lady who does the period stuff. Yes. Yes, I am the lady who researches Waimakalehua. And one of the first questions I always get is ma'i a real word? Is ma'i the term for bleeding? And what does haumia mean? Yeah, so a lot of what we know from the word haumia is defiled. But when we break up that word, hau and mia, hau really, really stands out to me. And you can see on the slide here, two columns of words. We have haumia, which in the dictionary says defiled. Then we have hau'eka. In the dictionary, it means filthy. We also have hauka'e, stained, like a stained cloth. Then there's also the word hauna, which means stink. And all of those words, ho, prefix. But on the other side of this word ho is akua wahine, hau wahine. And hau wahine literally means female ruler. Then we have the name actually, Haumea. And her name means red ruler. Haunu'u, elevated ruler. Haulani, royal ruler. And Haumakapu'u, Lord with bulging eyes. And I'm just going to leave these words here for you. Another thing synonymous with Waimakalehua was vale vale. And in the sixth line of the Kumulipo, it says, O ka vale vale ho'okumu honua ia. O ka vale vale ho'okumu honua ia. And the vale vale is what established this earth. This honua. I don't think earth. Oh yeah, I would say earth is a good word for honua. So really looking at what vale vale really means. Some sources say vale vale is slimy stickiness. Other people, vale vale is also what is secreted from coral. Yeah, ko'a, o ka'a ko'a kana keiki puka. The ko'a is born from this sliminess in the ocean. But vale vale literally means menstruation. We're not just make any kind people. Our kupuna believed ika olalo no keola, ika olalo no kamake. And what we say has life, and what we say has consequences. So in my mind, why would our kupuna name menstruation vale vale, knowing that vale vale is what created this earth? So you see here a picture in the middle. This is a microscopic image of vaginal mucus Yeah, so vale vale from our kohe. This is a microscopic image. I heard someone speaking. Is everything okay? Okay, hold on. Microscopic image of our vale vale wahine while in ovulation. So at the peak of our hanau-ness, or our ability to hanau, this is what our vale vale looks like. And on the left hand side is a picture of hapu'u, of a hapu'u from underneath. I took this photo right at the beginning in 2016, at the beginning of my master's journey. Um, for no reason, I just had a camera and went on a hike. And
No, we can't see the photo. If you can, the slides haven't moved at all.
oh, what can you see now? Nothing? Oh, goodness. What can you see now? Are we looking? We can see vale vale now. Okay, we're just going to leave it on this view then. I'm not going to go into present mode. It seems like present mode is what's I could not see the chat, but I can now see the chat. Okay, Hikino, I'm so sorry. We're going to have all of this ugliness at the top. Please ignore. My OCD is going off right now, but ignore. We can go over those slides later. Okay, vale vale. So this picture on the left here is of a shot from underneath the hapu'u, and the hapu'u is the tree fern. There's not a lot of hapu'u on Oahu, but Hawaii Island has lots of hapu'u. And when I took this photo, I had no idea the kauna or the kinolau of this mea kanu. And hapu'u, as it turns out, because nothing is coincidence, this hapu'u is the kinolau o haumea. So mind blown at this point, knowing that this photo here, ferning, it's called ferning in fertility IVF clinics and fertility clinics. When they can see that your vale vale looks like this, it means that you're ready to have a baby. Yeah, your puo is ready to receive vale vale. So sperm is also named vale vale. But one vale vale is ready for the next vale vale to hanau. And that is Haumea's realm. She is in the realm of hanau keiki. So on this side, the kinolau o Haumea, in the middle is what our vale vale looks like when we're getting ready to have a keiki. And that just all to me tells me that vale vale is a very special word. And then going back to the sixth line of the kumulipo, o ka vale vale ho'okumu honua ia, our menstrual blood, our vaginal mucus, sperm. I don't have sperm, but probably half of you guys do. Sperm created this earth. Kako altogether, we created this realm. And from here, I knew that moving forward with this research was not only important, but essential. And we all know about the word essential nowadays. It was like life or death for me in that space at that time. I needed to holomua with this research. And going back, I'll just go back to this slide for some of you folks that wanted to take a look at this photo that didn't, because my slides weren't sharing. I had a lot of male teachers in college. Yeah, and no dogging on Kane, but they just sometimes don't understand. And if this is the first time for Kane out there who are listening to my presentation, welcome. You are my people. Velina mai, me ke aloha. But I had a few Kane teachers who blatantly just said, wahine menstruate, and menstruation is haumia, and therefore you're dirty. It was just like wahine equals haumia equals dirty. It was just like point blank, just like that. And because of the ahi ena with me, I immediately said, in Paradise Palms, if any of you folks remember Paradise Palms at UH Manoa, that's where I spent a lot of my time, because Manoa Gardens was a little too distracting. Paradise Palms had that salad bar in the middle. In Paradise Palms, in that moment, I knew that I was going to prove this kumu wrong. And I did, thankfully. So I understand that Waimakalehua, I mean, vale, yeah, menstrual blood and vaginal mucus is very important. And I started to really dig in. Okay, so like, what is a Hawaiian menstrual practice? And I looked to Kamakau, Samuel Manaya Kalani Kamakau, Abraham Fornander, and Malo. So first red flag, they're all men. Yes, they are all male historians who recorded our mo'olelo Hawaii. And I'm not dogging, I'm just putting out there, putting all of that iki out there, that these accounts come from Kane. And Kamakau wrote that when 2 or 3 wahine gather together, that is called a pu'uhonua. And we know in our Hawaiian culture that pu'uhonua are safe spaces. Abraham Fornander wrote, and when wahine separated themselves from the layman's kauhale, they were practicing maluhia. And in that sense, he was saying that women during Waimakalehua and hanau keiki, yeah, during menstruation and during active labor, they are so kapu, yeah, their sacredness is heightened so high that they need to remove themselves from other things that are noa, because their kapu is so heightened. They don't want to they don't want the noa-ness of the kauhale to intermingle with the kapu of what they're doing with their menstruation and their active labor. And that's what Fernando wrote. And Malo, I love. If you guys ever want to read my thesis, just Google Makana Kāne-Martin Nui Waimakalehua. Just Google it, and it's probably going to be the first thing that pops up. I checked, someone messaged me the other, this is a tangent, but anyway, someone messaged me the other day that my thesis has been downloaded 3,500 times since 2018. The only person's dissertation, I didn't write it, I wrote a thesis. The only person's file that was downloaded more than mine was Kiha Sai's critique on international law. So if you want to go and read how I break down what Malo wrote, please just go and Google. We're all on our computers right now. That's easy. But Malo wrote about ka'awale, and being that wahine chose to separate themselves from the kauhale, from layman's living space. They chose unto themselves to separate from everybody else because they were menstruating. And that's a flip in the narrative. The narrative in 2016, when I first started my research, was that women were banished. They were abolished and they were sent to exile because they were dirty. And yet Kamakau, Fornander, and Malo, mind you, who were all men, were saying no. They chose to hang out with themselves. They chose to separate themselves, remove themselves from that space. And if I may insert my own narrative, relax for 7 to 10 days. And finally, people didn't believe me, like, oh no, my grandma's been saying ma'i, my grandma's been saying rags, we've all been, it's an ugly thing. So I just straight up went to the dictionary that said, and I looked up menstruation, and the words are hana vai, he'e koko, vai, vai ula, vai o ka wahine, Waimakalehua, koko puna, ho'oki'o, mau, and lele. So vai is, I'm using the word essential too much, but vai is so important. Vai, 1, vai, 2, vai ula, 3, wai oka wahine, 4, Waimakalehua. 5 times in that dictionary, wai is mentioned. And we all know we all have been following the news. We've all been following what's happening out at Red Hill. Vai is so important to our survival, to our culture. We have so many vahipana named after vai. Waialai, Pahu, Waikane, Waiakeakua, Waianai. And we would be foolish not to believe and not to know that menstruation, synonymous with wai, is important. Anyway, I'm getting on my soapbox. Let's move on. So part of what I started to research was this thing called a Hawaiian menstrual practice. And I totally made up that term. And basically it means, how do I practice menstruation? How do I go into this space every single month through a Hawaiian lens with the most Hawaiian tools? And there were many ways. There were many things that we did do. So according to the practice of Maluhia, which is to keep the peace. I hate giving into the narrative that women are so angry during Waimakalehua. We're not angry. We just have different expectations. And sometimes when wahine are experiencing hormonal imbalance and experiencing pain, yeah, just being straight up, having your period is very painful. For me, I experience pain in my lower abdomen, pain in my lower back. Sometimes I get these headaches at the bottom of my neck. And in order for my mana, yeah, my little orb here, to be in Maluhia with others, is that I just need to ka'avale. I need to draw away from things that are noa, like my husband and my dog. I just need space to separate. And you know, what does that look like? What does that look like in the 21st century? What does that look like today? So for me personally, Maluhia and Ka'avale means that I can use my second bathroom for me and me only. And I know that that comes from a space of privilege. Me and my Kane are so privileged to have 2 bathrooms in our house. And when I am in Waimakalehua, that second bathroom is for me and for me only. Sometimes I need just some space from others, and my pu'uhonua, my safe space, is that bathroom, is that second bathroom. But according to Kamakau, pu'uhonua was also a safe space with other wahine Waimakalehua. So in the 21st century, and this is a question for all of you folks out there, how do we, as Kanaka or as allies, how do we hold space for wahine Waimakalehua, menstruating women, to come together in a sustainable way without taking infrastructure away from other groups that may need it more than us? How do we carve a space, and where are those spaces within our communities, so that we can in ourselves occupy land and occupy space for our practices? I'm just going to leave that as an open-ended question, and all of you out there can start to ruminate and nalu on that thought. So other 21st century Waimakalehua practices was hui kala. I named it hui kala because within the context of what I was reading was that hui kala is to be forgiven or to step into a noa or step into a kapu space. I did not want to, my only apprehension with it was that it was heavily occupied by Christian rhetoric, meaning hui kala within the kingdom, maybe even more of the territorial period. Hui kala was synonymous with freeing yourself of sins, like biblical sins. However, to reclaim that word hui kala was actually a hi'uvai or a pikai along with pule. So one of the menstrual practices that we learned from He Mo'olalo no Akahia Kuleana was that every time she was leaving the halepe'a, every time she left the she left her menstrual space, she always went into a hi'uvai. She went into a stream, and that stream, if anyone knows that mo'olalo of Akahia Kuleana and Liloa no Pulawa Hano Maila Umia Liloa. Umia Liloa, oh my gosh, I'm on so many tangents. Umia Liloa was conceived right after Akahia Kuleana left the halepe'a. And according to some other, the historian is slipping in my mind, she was actually still menstruating when she and Liloa conceived Umia Liloa. Anyway, going back, one of the Hawaiian menstrual practices that I extract from He Mo'olalo no Akahia Kuleana was to physically bathe or to physically do something in order to spiritually move your body from a kapu space into a noa. So these hui kala are also seen in many spaces. When a aha is about to begin, most times it's the wahine's role. When a ceremony begins, it's most times the wahine's role to ho'onoa, to hui kala that whole space in order for the procession to begin. Even in hula, we see this in Mary Monarch. No ʻohana kia kui kana hele hele. When a halau is about to get onto the stage, kumu hula or the ho'oulu will go on and clear that space of anything that may have happened before. So we're spiritually letting go of whatever had happened in order to step into this new space. So specifically for Waimakalehua, it's from a space of kapu into a space of noa. So how do we do that in the 21st century? For me, I just take a shower. A normal shower imbued with my own pule, imbued with my own intentions, that I may safely transition from kapu into noa. And as I'm doing that for myself, I'm also doing that for my space, my second bathroom, my bedroom, and so that we can be noa again. Because it's hard to be in kapu all the time. It is exhausting to be in kapu all the time. That's why even in Waimakalehua, it is exhausting because we are in a state of ceremony forever, as for those days. And then finally, looking to what we actually used. So in Ikava Kahiko, our material culture was hapu'u, specifically the pulu of the hapu'u. So hapu'u is the tree fern, and I don't have a picture of it, but this is the tree fern here. But hapu'u has this thing called pulu, and it's like on the, if you ever see, it's like the tree, and then there's like this cotton like material. So this cotton like material was used to omo, or to suck up all of the vale vale from the wahine. So hapu'u was the material culture, and what do we use now? We currently are using pads and tampons. They are kind of the same thing. However, pads and tampons give off a very dangerous chemical called dioxin, and it could cause toxic shock to our ovaries. And that's why we should not be using pads and tampons. So what are 21st century materials that we can use that are like hapu'u and pulu? Putting it out there. Also, a couple material of our kupuna was that they only wore pa'u in the halepe'a, meaning that they weren't covered on their chest. And it was really interesting to read that in accounts because I felt like they were always topless. Our kupuna were constantly topless. So why was it important for historians, Malo, Fornander, and Kamakau to specifically point out they did not wear tops in the halepe'a? I'm still trying to figure that out. But they only wore old pa'u that were no longer used for layman's activities like hanging out around the house and so on. But also, a really important thing to note is that in almost everything that I read, they cared for their kapa material, for all of their vale things. Yeah, so if it was pulu that had soaked up vale, or if it was the pa'u that had soaked up vale, it was always buried, kanu ia. Yeah, the more accurate translation of the word kanu is to plant as in to grow from. And it was kanu, it was buried or planted in the same way that our ieve, our placenta, is also buried and planted. It was very touching. I don't even think touching is the right word. It was very appropriate that the same exact words and the same exact practice of burying ieve was also burying Waimakalehua. And we know in a Hawaiian practice of planting our ieve, we're protecting its mana. We're protecting that connection of child and mother to ieve, to po. We're protecting that connection. And for that to be synonymous with protecting the mana of our Waimakalehua, of our vale, was again mind-blowing. Our kupuna definitely understood that there was something very sacred about that ceremony, or very sacred about that time, to honor it the same way that ieve was honored and cared for. So going back to kapa material in the 21st century, something that we can use is a moon cup. There are many brands nowadays for those diva cups. It's a cup that can collect your vale. And for me, and when I told this to my girls the first time ever, they were freaking out. Anyway, for me, I kanu it straight back into a kumula'au lehua. I have a ahu Waimakalehua, which is for me and my family to continue. Yet you can create some sort of space or reserve a space to malama your Waimakalehua. And I live in a condominium right now. I don't have access to soil and land that is mine, that I would want to leave my Waimakalehua, but I have a mea kanu that takes on all of that responsibility for me. There are also reusable pads. If we're looking back to kapa material of our kupuna, they used their whole lives were sustainable, period. But their kapa material were also sustainable. Take it back, wash it in the river, wash it in the stream, bury it. It being there is not going to harm the land. It'll actually provide a lot of nutrients. So you could think about reusable pads or reusable period panties. One thing I would say though is when you wash those reusable pads and reusable panties, avoid washing them with all of your layman's clothes, because the kapu of your Waimakalehua, of your vale is heightened, and you wouldn't want to mix the clothing of your Waimakalehua with your layman's clothing. Mai kaʻi. So, moving on. Oh, how's the audio? Leilani, is my audio all right? I see some things in the chat.
Yeah, your audio is fine. We're trying to figure it out for mobile users. There might be some issues, so we're gonna figure that out and put it in the chat for everyone.
Mahalo. So I always part of my kanalua, part of my apprehension with doing this research pretty much in an academic space was that I didn't want my research, everything that I read, all of my mana, I didn't want my research to be like some file in a cabinet that was never ever read again. So always applying what I read and what I wrote into the future was really, really important. And I was so fortunate to be approached by community members that knew of a family who did their own menstrual ceremony. I totally created this word, aha kahemua. That was absolutely a word that I created. And aha kahemua means menarche ceremony. Menarche is not a word I created. Menarche is something I learned from Google. Menarche is the first instance of when a kaikamahine will bleed. That phenomenon is called menarche. So aha kahemua being the ceremony that is held for a girl's first period. And this ʻohana has 3 children. The eldest is a daughter, the middle is a son, and the youngest is a daughter. And this ʻohana has already a well-established Hawaiian practice in what they do. And I'm going to keep their identity, as we probably all know who they are, but I'm going to keep their identity a secret. But they already have a practice that they do in their ʻohana that takes care of their without giving it away. They do stuff. They do ceremonies all the time. Ceremony is totally a thing. But as the years and the months were approaching to their eldest daughter's first period, they had so many questions like, what do we do? How do we properly honor these spaces? How do we properly honor this time? Who do we call? What, like everything. They had so many questions. And I just want to mahalo them. They created their own aha kahemua, their menarche ceremony, with a very strong foundation of pule and a very Leilani, right? Okay, very strong foundation of pule and a very strong foundation of knowing how to conduct ceremony. So some of the things that they learned from their experience from the first aha kahemua to the second aha kahemua is that makahana kaʻike. There is no way that we can do anything without actually doing it. And part of their ceremony was to hoʻokuleana. This was a time to pass milestones over, or to acknowledge a milestone, and then to pass on kuleana into the next generation. So one of the kuleana that they had passed on through this aha kahemua was this mana of coming into womanhood. What is your kuleana now that you can bear children? What is your kuleana now that your hands, your lima no'eau, are moving into different spaces? Or she is now going to learn how to make kapa, because kapa in the 21st century now takes care of certain things in our community. And in this aha kahemua, this ʻohana also understood that halepea, this menstrual house, and this time of menstruating is places for ike. So this is when wahine sit together and wahine become the the holders of ike in that space. And that's when I thought back. That's when I thought back to oh, Auntie Mehana, I see you in the chat, very distracting chat. As halepe'a, we're like the palapala of archival knowledge that Kamakau, Fornander, and Malo saw their actual writing down. So and I have this theory that halepe'a were the archives of all of these stories. When else would wahine be voluntarily in the same space every single month? And I imagined the halepe'a to be like a continuation of stories, much like the mo'olelo, the Vaihona Nupepa. Our newspapers were just the continuation of the story, next week the rest of the story, next week the rest of the story. And that's how I understood halepe'a to be as well. Oh, Auntie was telling me the story about a kahia kuleana, and she's going to finish the story next month when I see her, and next month and next month. And that's kind of what the halepe'a was to the ʻohana. They understood that this was a place where ike can be transferred. Also, it's quite obvious now, but in 2018, it was not. Ceremony and aha was a tool and a cultural gathering to mark the importance of something. So when this ʻohana had a menstrual menarche ceremony, they were also saying this time is just as important and we're going to honor it. And when we do so, it's going to be like wildfire. Everybody in the community will also feel like this is a very important thing. And I see that our time is running low, but I'm going to move on a little bit. So what, Makana, the period lady, she graduated in 2018. And what was it? Where did she go from there? Quite honestly, I did a lot of speeches. I did a lot of one-off talks. This is a picture of me up on Mauna Kea. Presley Amuksang just asked, like, hey, can you talk about something? I was like, yeah, I'll talk about Waimakalehua. And every time I get to share this ike, I am just so thankful. I'm so thankful that yet another person wants to hear this mo'olelo. So happy that people just want to take in this knowledge. So yeah, I've done a lot of talks with very intimate and sometimes large gatherings. I also did a talk for Planned Parenthood. That was really good because I was able to have an audience with non-Indigenous people who held a lot of mana. And I do things like this. Yeah, talk story with crowds like yourself. And it's very sad that I can't see your face because I like to see your eyes go, whoa, or like kind of like screeching. I like seeing those reactions. Like whenever I say the word vaginal mucus, everyone goes, huh. Anyway, but my most, what's the right word? I live for these moments. This picture right here. I live for this. Since many wahine and moms and aunties and tutus have heard my talk, I get so many requests. Oh, can you come talk to our girls? And that is my jam. I love talking to kaikamahine. And here is the picture of Ko'olau Aina Momona that is run by Anuenue Punua and her team of fabulous mamas. They have a summer program, and pretty much as soon as I graduated 2018, they invited me to talk to their kaikamahine. And it was just a small, intimate circle with maybe 10 girls. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 other girls. And I just talked. I shared with them what I had learned from Mo'olelo, and then shared with them what they can do to practice a sovereign Waimakalehua every single month. And for these kaikamahine, it was so easy. It was so easy for them to identify that ceremony and Waimakalehua is the same. They were able to also identify that when they menstruate, not only are they practicing these rituals, but they are in aha. They are constantly in ceremony. And these young kaikomahine, you know, are so beautiful and they just got it. However, when I talk to groups of moms or aunties, anyone who's pretty much 25 and older, it is unfortunately difficult, not difficult, I'm going to say, where it's easy for young girls to understand their sacredness during menstruation, it's a little harder for their makua counterparts to understand that they're sacred. And that's because there's so many years and decades and generations of menstrual shame that they need to work through. And that's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for, to talk story. Pua Mohala is also a really good organization to talk story about deconstructing and reclaiming the sacredness of your menstruation. And all goes to show is that when we teach our kaikomahine the correct thing at the beginning, there is less trauma that they need to unlearn, like us as makua. I was extremely fortunate to understand the sacredness of Waimakalehua in my teens, because I have a mom, and my mom had a wahine partner. So I grew up with two moms. My mom had only one other sister, and of them, oh, excuse me, I have three younger sisters, and my tutu was always the go-getter of my ʻohana, the matriarch. So I have always had wahine heroes to look up to. So I never saw my mana Waimakalehua as less than or lower than. But that is not necessarily the case for all of you folks out there. You folks may also be working through some trauma that you need to think of. But going back to where has my research gotten me now, it has gotten me to these small, intimate conversations with young kaikomahine. And I'm in contact with a lot of them still today, and I still get text messages from their moms like, hey, something super cool happened, something da 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 da, and so on and so forth. And those are the moments that I live for. I've been presenting to Ko'olau Aina Momona, oh, 3 years in a row already. I'll probably get another phone call this summer, and I will gladly answer the kahea. So going back, these were all one-off conversations, and that's the majority of what I do. However, I've also started this 6-month halepe'a cohort. So right now I meet every month with 4 kaikomahine over Zoom. Myself, I am on Oahu. 1 kaikomahine is living on Kauai, and 3 of the others are living on Oahu. But we get to meet on Zoom, and their ha'awina that I give, they need to kilo their bodies at least 3 times a week. And we together in the first meeting of this 6-month halepe'a cohort, I asked them, okay, what do you want to observe in your bodies? This is what's going to happen leading up to menstruation. And in your first few years of Waimakalehua, while you are in adolescence and while you're still in puberty, these are the other things that are going to happen. So knowing all of this, I posed to them, what do you want to kilo? What do you think is going to, what patterns do you want to observe in order to project your health into the future? So you know, these kids are amazing. Even though they're 11 years old, they're saying things like, "Kumu, I really want to." Oh, auntie, I told them they need to call me Anake, because I was a former teacher for two of them. One is a current teacher, and then the other I've never had as a student. Anyway, moving on. Pilina. Pilina is the point of that. Kilo. Oh, so some of the things that they do kilo is how much sleep they get. How much sleep they get in correlation to their emotions. They also kilo what type of food, if it's aipono or aiino, if it's like healthy food or not so healthy food. And then they also kilo what their emotions are in reaction to others. Yeah, so they've all noticed that they are a little bit more angry. They are a little bit short with their ʻohana. And I've asked them, okay, so please observe and kilo what happens when you get angry, or what happens when you are happy, or what happens when you are da 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 da. And so far, we are 3 months into this kilo. They are definitely seeing what causes their shortness or their anger. A lot of it is because I didn't get enough sleep. I was doing homework, but sometimes it's like, oh, well, I was going to Waimaka. I was angry, and then I Waimakalehua 3 days later. So I posted them, well, now do you think you're going to get angry? Is that an indication that you are going to Waimakalehua, and so on. We also do oli, that honors Haumea and all of her beautiful facets in our mo'oku auhau. Every month I hold space for a short lesson. I always have a lesson planned for that day, and sometimes it's usually 30 to 45 minutes. But so beautiful this past month, one of the girls just got her Waimakalehua. So it was a whole hour and a half of just asking her questions. So now 2 have had their Waimakalehua and 2 have not. The 2 who have not had their Waimakalehua were asking some really interesting questions. One question that came up that I didn't really expect to hear was, what color is it? What color is your Waimakalehua? Is it red or is it brown? And when in my mind, I thought that was a really good question, because so much blood is red, yet our Waimakalehua takes on so many different colors at the beginning, second day, third day, at the end, it has a little consistency. And for me, that's normal because I've been menstruating since I was 11 for 16 years. But for them, they're anticipating everything. They're anticipating all sorts of, they're probably anticipating only one color, but they heard from someone that it's actually brown, or it's actually not really blood, it's just like this consistency. So to see the innocence in their questions, and this is all held by Makaʻolelo Hawaiʻi as well, which is also very unique. To hear the questions that they consistently ask each other is kind of crazy, because as makua, we may, and I'm not a parent, but as an adult, we sometimes prescribe a attitude, or we prescribe a type of response from keiki. But when you're in these pu'uhonua, in these very safe spaces where I encourage them to be as vocal or as vulnerable, or encourage them to be as niele as possible, these kids actually have a lot of really good questions. So this is the first cohort I've ever run. At the end of the 6-month journey, so we planned it so that we are during makahiki, and this is another makua called me. I didn't ask her if I can release her name, so I won't. But another makua asked me, "This is what we want to do. Can we do it?" I said yes. So we are going to end that 6-month cohort in February, and I will be sure to report back to all of us all these amazing things. And that's kind of where my research has that's kind of where my research has gone. And I know it's 10:05 right now. I kind of just want to open up for questions. And people are always like, why do you always leave so much time for questions at the end? Because this research is so huge that addressing just one question can take a really, really long time. So Leilani, were there any questions that came up in the chat box? Reading through the chats right now. Personal settings.
Hello.
Aloha.
Oh, hi, Makana. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I think one question came from Miley Lou. What about the other end of the cycle? Decades later, what kind of ceremony or marking of the end of Waimakalehua years?
That is the second most common question that comes. Mahalo, Miley, for that question. And
yeah,
I'm just, Leilani, okay, thank you. So that's the second most asked questions that I get. And I don't know. I don't know a lot about, the English word is slipping my mind. Menopause. I don't know a lot about menopause. I don't know a lot about perimenopause. Basically, what I could say is that Haumea, when she is towards the end of in her old years, she is called Hanau Makalolo. And there, in the Kumulipo, there is a whole section of what Haumea did in her menopause body, and it always goes back to these two words, Hanau Makalolo, Hanau Lolo, and it means to birth wisdom from your brain. And in our youth, when we are menstruating, we are in a state of Hanau Makekohe. We as women give birth with our pool, with our vagina. And Kane, they Hanau Makalima. They birth anything that they are able to birth or with their hands. So they're birthing ki'akua, they're birthing houses, they're birthing va'a. Women also built their own halepe'a, might I add. Especially maka'inana, common women, commoners women. Anyway, they built their own halepe'a with their own hands. But going back, what are the ceremonies of Hanau Makalolo? I don't know, but the practice, what we do every single day while Hanau Makalolo is to pass the stories on, to pass the genealogy, pass the ike, pass all of the crafts, any wisdom that we can birth from our brains and we can pass on to the next generation is what I feel needs to happen during that time. Any ceremonies specifically, I don't know. I haven't really looked that hard either for those Hanau Makalolo ceremonies, but in certain cases, and in some accounts that I've read in the archive, the kupuna wahine is always the one to help the mo'opuna transition into the halepe'a. And in certain accounts in Maori culture, the transition between grandma into menopause and mo'opuna into Waimakalehua is pretty much like within months of each other. It's like a mana is being passed, sometimes days within one another. So the essence of Hano Makekohe is being passed down, and that kind of mo'o, yeah, that secession, that mo'o-ness, absolutely. Okay, I'm reading a comment from Mahalo. I hope everyone can view the recording, because I see a lot of comments about I can't hear. Hopefully you can view the recording. Mahalo ya oi, e anake mehana. Jolyn, thank you for this wonderful presentation. Mahalo. Sid, sharing about Makana. I would love to attend a talk story session on this topic when you're on Moku o Keawe. Seems like Moku o Keawe is calling. I would love to go. I honestly haven't been on an airplane since December 2019. But if I do get there, we will get there. Keone. Okay, so you're saying, I love the way you used Olelo to understand all of kapu behind Waimakalehua. You really like the Vai, Mahalo, Pu'uhonua examples, and even the Hui Kala before returning to Halipea. Fascinating. Coming from a Kane, by the way. Mahalo e Keoni Shizuma. So I always forget, but I want to hold it into my heart. Having these conversations with Kaikamahine is super important. But having this Waimakalehua conversation with dads, uncles, brothers, sometimes kupuna kane, grandfathers, is even more important. And that's because we need everyone on board. One huge thing, well, everything's huge in my mind, but one very important historical moment while I was doing this research, this Waimakalehua research, was the Me Too movement. And I feel that when all of us, Kanaka, Haole, Mekiko, all humans, when we can identify the sacred in ourselves and then identify the sacred within others, we can respect personal boundaries all the time. So, e keoni, I hope that you can go and share this mo'olalo and this research with other kane, because it is that important for all of us to know, not just for preventing Me Too cases, but just so that we can all respect each other. I feel like white feminism, I'm just gonna say it out loud. I'm just gonna say, I feel like white feminism is very detrimental because it creates these it creates boundaries rather than bridges. But I feel also in the same sense that when we can educate Waimakalehua, Kahemua, Ka'imua, so the boys, the Keiki Kane version of this Kaikamahine milestone, if we can also honor those boy milestones, we could all live in better harmony. Mahalo. Okay, mahalo, Richard from Waimea Valley, Oahu. We would like to come and share your manaʻo. We build, okay, before we build our halepea. If anyone would like to contact me, my email is kane@gmail.com. I've put my email in the chat. So just go ahead and email me. I would love to come and talk. I have been studied period poverty in Hawaii and found that it's a huge issue. Do you have any manaʻo or resources on expanding access to period products? Aloha e Alani. So I did sit down with a company called Ma'i Movement. They are all over Instagram. I think they have a Facebook, Ma'i Movement. I know that Ma'i Movement also did a pop-up with Pa'i, with Auntie Vicky. I don't. So, do you have any manaʻo or resources on access to period products? No, but I do know that there are companies out there and organizations like yourself who are trying to do more. So I would say get in front of the legislature as much as you can. Do as much PR, get onto the radio, whatever you can to spread the word, get into the Star Advertiser. I know that me and my friends, even in our 20s, are trying to get away from Instagram and Facebook and just go back to reading the newspaper. And wow, the ads in the newspaper are very archaic. So just get the word out there and just keep sharing. Keep sharing your story. I'm a one person show. I pretty much just do all the things myself, and you can do it. Oh yeah, Lisa put the Lisa Maruyama put Ma'i movement. And I know that there are two. There's Ma'i movement and then another one that is trying to address period poverty. Lisa, would you know the other company trying to address period poverty in Hawaii? So I'm looking back to one of Keone's so as I fill time, one of the mo'olelo that I bring up in the 6-month Halepe'a cohort is this small section of he mo'olelo no olopana lawa o lu'uki. This one, this version of the story specifically comes from Fornander. However, I like to teach ke ano o ko lu'ukia noho ana makela vahi mapu'u kawaiwai because it brings up a lot of lessons for the girls. Just a little backstory. Lu'ukia was known as one of the most beautiful Hawaii island ali'i. In some versions of the mo'olelo, Lu'ukia was born on Oahu and moved to Tahiti and lived there with either Olopana or Moikeha. They sometimes are synonymous, but sometimes they're brothers. In other mana of the mo'olelo, Lu'ukia lived in Tahiti, was born in Tahiti, but moved to Hawaii Island. And the mo'olelo goes that when Lu'ukia was preparing to menstruate, so that wording tells me that she knew that she was going to menstruate. When Lu'ukia was preparing to menstruate, she would start her trek from Halava, no, not Halava, from Waipio, Hawaii, all the way to this place called Pu'ukawaiwai. I've personally never been to Pu'ukawaiwai, so when I go to Hilo side to talk story with all of the ʻohana out in Keaukaha, I would love to go to Pu'ukawaiwai. That's amazing, and in Hilo. Anyway, she would hike from Waipio Valley all the way to Pu'ukawaiwai, and in this hike, she was separating herself. She was separating herself from the mundane and the layman's community and stepping into this space of kapu. And on one of her monthly ka'awale action, when she was going up to the halepe'a, this man from Waimea, his name was Waiawea, approached her and said, "Will we sleep together? Yeah, can e moi pu kaua?" And she said, "No, a'ole, we will not moi pu." And Waiawea insisted, "Oh, why not?" And she said, "Because ua Waimakalehua or wahana vaiau." The word from Fornander, the specific word was hana vai. Wahana vaiau. And he goes, "Yeah, and like, why does hana vai mean that we cannot sleep together?" And she olalo pa'a meaning she insisted, and she was insistent that they do not sleep together. No kumea ua kapu kawahine e moi pu me ke kane. It was sacred. It was against all of the rules for men and women to sleep together during this Waimakalehua. And therefore he left her and he exited the premises and went over to his wahine and told her this story. But one of the important things from this mo'olelo was that that place where she menstruated was called Pu'u Kavaivai. And just looking at the words, vai, yeah, water, wealthy, lots of resources. Why would something so dirty, yeah, why would a menstruating woman go to a place called Pu'uka Vai and menstruate there? The answer is not because she's dirty, but because she's sacred and she is in ceremony, and therefore she needs to go to places that are also synonymous with sacred and ceremony. Another interesting thing from that mo'olelo was that her halepe'a was absolutely enclosed by a rock wall, and that place is still called Pano Lu'ukia to this very day. And the rock enclosure around her halepe'a signified physical separation, separating what is kapu from what is noa. It also signified that there are boundaries. So when I and then the mo'olelo goes on that when she had finished her Waimakalehua, Waiawea met her in that same spot, and then they slept together. So some of the lessons that I extract from Ke Ano o Ko Lu'ukia Noho, from this mo'olelo that I teach to the young girls is about boundaries. You have to set not only physical boundaries, but emotional boundaries as well. You also have to use proper terminology for Waimakalehua. So yeah, white elephant in the room. Is ma'i the correct term for menstruation? And I am gonna say no. Going back to the slide, just look at the dictionary. And the dictionary can be a little confusing because you look up the word ma'i and it also says menstruation, but just gonna go back. Menstruation, hana vai, he'ekoko vai, vai ula, vai o kawahine, Waimakalehua, koko puna, ho'oki'o, mau, and lele. So when I talk about the story of Lu'ukia, I also talk about terminology. We are no longer going to use the word ma'i because ma'i means sickness and disease and illness, and that's not the mana that we want to pass on. I also talk about halepe'a as protection. Yeah, so we talk about what halepe'a is in the 21st century, and that's when we as kaikomahine and wahine get together when we are menstruating, or even when we're talking about menstruation. I feel like that would be a halepe'a. But halepe'a as a protection. Lu'ukia did not want to sleep with Waiawea in that time, and therefore she went to her safe house at Pu'ukavaivai at Pano Lu'ukia, and it was a protection for her. It was pale. So in translating that to 11-year-olds, where do you find pale? Where do you find protection? Is it in your oli? Is it in your mindful meditation? Is it in your room? Is it physically in your room? So I always fall back on mo'olelo to retell those stories. Yeah, Keone, they ended up sleeping together after she finished her Waimakalehua. Kanoi Wilson, mahalo nui makana for sharing your ike kupuna. So important. Yes, I agree. These cultural practices are so important for our ʻohana as a way to ho'ulu ike. I agree. Also to honor and elevate the uniqueness of our culture. I agree. Mahalo e kanoi for voicing that. And these cultural practices are also the way our kupuna lived and survived for many hundreds and thousands of years. Randomly, I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast. I love Joe Rogan. And he had a European scientist. He was hosting a European scientist. And at the end of his debate, at the end of this European scientist, he said, we as Westerners are STUPID for not listening and looking to indigenous cultures for ways to survive in this changing world. So our cultural practices are not, they're more like survival practices, I feel. In order to survive and to ho'omau and to persevere, we have to look back at these practices. Mahalo. Any last questions? I know we have 4 more minutes at the end of this session. Yeah, I am so mahalo e Kanoilani for your message. You know, research is so hard. How do we even decolonize research? How can we allow for better and greater access to the answers? Hopefully someone is watching out there who can give us more access. Ai, ola kako. Anyway, I'm going to do my ahuiho wave. Mahalo for having me. Mahalo e Leilani. Mahalo e Max Mukai for being such great hosts.